So it gives me great pleasure now to introduce our next speaker, Michael Charming, who's going to speak on how intimacy problems impact sex and orgasms. So Michael Charming is an orgasm coach, a sexual healer, and a relationship expert. He's a certified body worker, a therapist, and a certified life coach, which you'll have to explain what that is, life coach, because I don't know either what that is. Michael is the founder of the practice of AOM and of the Orgasm Coach Podcast. He is also the author of 3 books, including the best-selling book, Amplify Your Orgasm. And his other 2 books are 21 Flavors of Orgasm and What's Your F ... in opinion. I'm not quite sure what that is, but he'll fill you in. And I just want to say that how I met Michael, actually, because I met Michael, I was running it was actually in those days I was calling it tantric speed dating events in London, where I would try to help people to get away from just the normal kind of form of speed dating, which seemed to be so superficial and surface, and to encourage a slightly deeper communication. And Michael came along probably to check out what I was doing, and we just connected brilliantly. And so I'm so pleased to be able to welcome you today to this summit, Michael. And I'm profoundly grateful to you for coming and sharing today. So perhaps could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Laura. And yes, that evening was really absolutely amazing. Came in Canary Wharf, and you had these amazing, fantabulous events. We go to these dating events, which are very sort of superficial, or questions and answers about selling about yourself. But the reality actually hits when we start triggering each other, right? And I think the way the dating sort of focuses on is more around, it should actually focus on what has been your bad points and how do you deal with them. Let's cut all the crap and let's go straight in. Why to waste things like that? So I really love that event, and yes, we connected very well. And thank you for this opportunity for this summit and having me. Like you said, so I have been an orgasm coach. I have been working in this field for about 10 years now, more than 10 years. And of course, I have gone through my own explorations and transformations throughout this journey, which has allowed me to write the books and share the knowledge and experience with others. And I keep learning. I'm a body worker, so the body works allows us to let go of all the baggages, all the things, all the stress, trauma that we have built up on our body, throughout our life. It's like holding that rucksack, but we don't know that we have been holding it. So bodywork actually helps to release all of that, because at the very deep core, our bodies are designed to give us pleasure, right? Human in its form, whether we look at a physical aspect or an emotional aspect or a spiritual aspect, we are designed to attain that pleasure. That's one of our purpose of coming into this earth. But what happens is throughout our life, through whether it's the school days or college days, we go through so much pain. And because there's no clearance of that pain, then it continues to start accumulating. And of course, there are relationship breakups, the stresses, etc. So what Bodyworks does is it allows to clear all of that. It gives us the new form as if you've just been reborn. And now I'm the 21 Flavors of Orgasm is a book that I published last year. It's a very interesting book. It provides 101 tips for men. What this book has is interviews of women. I published my book Amplify Your Orgasm 2-3 years ago, where I shared about my experiences. And what I say is one of the biggest problems that we have in the world is that we look at human as a human being, right? But I said, let's simplify it. Let's break this down human being into 5 different layers. We have a physical layer. So when we talk about orgasms at a physical level, we're talking about climax, right? Which is more of a physical body response, for whether it's an erection or the heart pressure, the heartbeats, etc. Then we have a mental form where we associate each other mentally, right? We're exchanging of the ideas. There's a fantasies, right? Then there's an emotional aspect, which is what a lot of women desire, that for men to connect with them emotionally before we get to the physical state. Then we have spirituality, right? So there are all these layers that I sort of shared in that. And then I said, why don't we do one thing? Let's hear it out from the ladies. And this 21 Flavors of Orgasm is basically 20 women where they're sharing about their first experiences of orgasm, their first experiences of sex, what it meant for them. You know, like you earlier, you mentioned that there was a time when you couldn't talk about those things. There were, you know, whether through parental, whether to society, and those were their experiences too. Of course, now in the current world, there's a lot of sexual empowerment has been happening for years. So it's a very different world that we're living in at the moment. But those are the experiences that shapes us. So what these women have sort of done is then they've shared about their life experiences, and then they've given us the tips for men as to how you can take the relationship and sexuality to the next level. So it's basically coming right from there, from the true source. That's what that book is about.
Oh gosh, fantastic. Yeah, I think this is so important. Actually, all of this information is so important. What does orgasm actually mean, Michael? And how does intimacy play a role in providing somebody with orgasms?
I think one of the biggest problems that I've found in defining an orgasm is, if you look at the historical text, most of the orgasm definition has been done by researchers who were men. And what they have done is they're mostly defined not only their orgasm, but also women's orgasm through their lens, which is fast-paced, which is rapid, and which is mostly on a physical level. And for me, orgasm is much more than that. Like I mentioned earlier, right? We have a pleasure at a physical level. Climax, which is ejaculation or gratification, is only a small part of the whole piece of the whole experience. Before I started this journey, there was an article that said women can experience an orgasm just by walking on the street. And I'm like, how does that happen? Like, it doesn't make sense to me, because for me to have an orgasm, I need to either watch a porn, or there's something needs to happen, you know, down there for me to experience it. But over the years, as I did a lot of different practices, as I allowed my energy, the sexual energy, which of course most men are not even familiar with, as I worked through that energy and allowed to move it through different parts of my body, I realized that apart from just the physical outlook, actually the orgasm that females feel and the orgasm that male feel are actually both the same. So some women get excited by emotions, some get excited by talking about God and spirituality. So what I'd say is that our orgasm is unique to each of us, and it moves around as we progress in our journeys, you know. So that's what I would say. The orgasm is activation of that sexual energy that passes through our body and gives us that sort of bliss and happiness, which we could either attain through ourselves or in connection with somebody.
Yeah, that's a good answer. Absolutely.
And
yeah, go
how
ahead.
does that impact intimacy? Few years ago, intimacy is a new concept. Okay, it's a concept in the Western world. I come from India, and we don't really sort of go through these sort of intimacies, because in a Bollywood Indian culture, we just do things. We have that sort of family culture created in that way. But of course, over the years, as I've been living in the Western world, I realized that intimacy is one of the biggest sort of issues here, and that's because people don't allow themselves, or it's difficult to trust others, and there could have been many reasons for it. A few years ago, I was in a conference, and somebody says the best way to define an intimacy is that into me you see, right? So I'm opening myself to allow you to see into me. And that could be at a physical level, where we allow, our other person to get in touch and connect with us, which is what we call a physical intimacy. The other could be an emotional intimacy, where we are sharing emotion, just like an orgasm. In the same way, I say intimacy is also 5 intimacies, and emotional intimacies where you're sharing deeply at an emotional level. And what happens is that when we start connecting with intimacy at a different level, it feeds into each other. So an emotional intimacy can lead to physical intimacy, right? And most men associate um, sex and physical intimacy as one, and that's why there are a lot of issues that happens in relationships.
Mm.
So how what are the common issues that we experience is that relationship instability is one of the biggest problems. If you have relationship instability, of course, there's no sex, there's no orgasm, there's more stresses. Earlier, Anna was talking about how masturbation sort of gives and allows the stress to be removed, right? And that's what basically sex and orgasm does. So the problems that we have is around how do we connect that sort of connection in a relationship that gives us that sort of uh, feeling with each other.
What would you say are the most common intimacy issues, Michael?
I would say I think it depends on person to person. It depends on relationship to relationship. I am not a person who sort of tries to generalize things. I think this is one of the things that actually happens quite common is we go into generalization. But what we have to look at is, yes, we can look at different aspects, different things that exist, but we still have to sort of look at what is actually existing within our relationship, what is actually existing within me and within this person. So not to follow the blanket rule, but to take it from there and then conceptually apply it within the relationship, right? The most common things I would say is, of course, the physical dysfunction. Women go through a lot of physiological changes throughout their body, and man doesn't really sort of have that knowledge. We don't really spend time in understanding that. So as a man, when we start, this is one of the things we need to do is to open up ourselves to understanding that, women bodies are designed differently, they function differently, and the rules that apply to us do not apply to them necessarily. So that's one of the common problems, that she's feeling in a certain way, instead of questioning, instead of suppressing that, we need to be open and have that conversation flowing around. So physical functionality is one. Relationship instability, which I've spoken about, is another common sort of intimacy problems. The other one, which I would say, is the misalignment, which is that sometimes we want to have an emotional connection. One partner may want an emotional connection, but the other is desiring a physical connection. And when there is this alignment at an energetic level, what we are not aware is we would be sabotaging or forcing or pressuring the other person. And this is where we need to sort of become more open towards understanding that there are these different levels of intimacies. Where are we at? What is my other partner desiring? And then how do we bridge that gap? Who has more need at that particular point in time? Let's fulfill that need, and then let's move to the other partner.
So that's really interesting. So would you say then that also could refer to a situation where different levels of commitment are wanted, so that you could have one partner that wants to have, say, marriage and, all of the things that go with that. Another person actually just wants to have a casual liaison, for example, and that comes out in the physical realm, would you say?
Yes. So the thing is, there is nothing wrong with us having different desires in life, and also different desires from each other. As we will change, as we evolve, as we go through different parts of our life, our desires are bound to change. A person may desire commitment, or maybe a short-term connection, while the other person may just desire a casual connection. What's important is to come back before engaging in any sort of physical activity. It's better to come back, sit down, and say how aligned our desires are. And if they are not, to what extent are we both each other willing to go, so that it doesn't feel as a rub off when things actually went to the physical level. So that sort of conversation needs to happen. And this is where men needs to sort of own and say that they shouldn't be rushing into things. They shouldn't be manipulating women into leading what they want. And this is where women needs to sort of take a bit of a, women are very much connected with their emotions. And this is where they sort of need to take a little bit step back and go a bit onto their mental level, rather than coming all the way through emotions. Because what happens is when the decision is taken at an emotional level, things will feel good. But when their sole purpose is not met, then it will feel that they have just been used, or it feels yucky, it feels rub off. So that connection, that dialogue needs to happen before anything moves forward. And then of course, the boundaries, needs to be defined. How is this going to be playing out? To what extent? What, the time frame, etc. And then once both the partners are on the same page, then go and enjoy the game, whatever that is.
That you just in a few sentences there, you just put together like so much information that is really important at the beginning of a relationship for people to be able to take a step outside of what's going on and to be able to see whether there is true compatibility there on all the different levels, and that is excellent. What would you mentioned that there are 5 ways to achieve true intimacy with another person. I just wondered if you could just go through those again, or just be clear about those.
Sure. So what I mean is that there are no 5 words. There are 5. What I define that if we see human in 5 different layers. So, for example, when I'm speaking to you, yes, you are there in front of me on a physical form, right? But there's a lot of things happening in the background. There's you have a lot of mental things going on, mental chatter or mental thinking going on, right? Then there is an emotional aspect, which is how are you feeling internally, emotionally, right? Then there is an energetic aspect, which we don't even. Energetic is one of the most elusive but very critical component of any relationship, whether it's a relationship with myself or whether it's a relationship with a partner. I'll come to this in a second. And the 5th one is a spiritual aspect, which is the purpose. My purpose as my being, my purpose in connection with you as your being, and my purpose in connection with this whole universe. Because spiritually, we could have different ideas. Some people may be tied to religion, etc. Some people may have a different desires and dreams to do something in the world. So what I say is that it's important. If a person is not feeling, if a person may look very good on a physical level, but that doesn't mean that person is good at a mental level. That doesn't mean that the person is good at an emotional level. So when I'm speaking with my partner, normally this is something it happened over a period of time as I learned through this process. For example, we had a good sex, right? And she's during the sexual connection, she's like very happy and very good. From my perspective, she should be, during a sexual connection, it was all good, right? But after sex, she's complaining. I'm like, where did things go wrong? Because we just had the connection, everything went so well, and here I am being complained. It's because there are so many things that are getting triggered. Sexual connection, sexual energy is so powerful. A lot of things will come up, and that's where we need to start tapping into the emotion. What happened? What came up? We need to start tapping into the the mental ideas. Like you said, a lot of things were not shared when we were growing up in terms of sexuality, right? So sexuality is, what I say is like a Pandora box. When you open it, you never know what will come up. And by having these 5 layers, by opening our mind to these 5 dimensions, it will start broadening our vision and understanding the human being that is in front of us, that we are wanting to connect.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I just want to say, while we're chatting, Michael and I, that Alexandra has put all of Michael's contact details in the chat, so that if you want to connect with him, you can. And he is offering a 90-minute session on Zoom on July the 16th. And Alexandra will put that link in the chat, so the Zoom link, so that all you need to do is just to be able to just go on those dates. So if you just, Alexandra, put that in the chat, and also put Michael's email address there too, so that people can reach him if they want to. because it's yeah, I mean, your clarity is huge, actually. I'm really enjoying listening to what you're having to say here. And would you say that sex is important for intimacy? Can you have intimacy without having sex?
Yes, absolutely. Sex is sex important for intimacy? I would say it's not necessarily important, but sex and intimacy together creates a good bond. If we are in a relationship, one of my deepest desire would be, yes, I like to connect with her on so many different do so many different things in life together. But one of the things I also desire to do with my partner is to connect with her sexually. Because when we connect, there is love, there is that feeling, there is that, this is good sex can take you and make you feel like a god, right? And why would I not want to experience that with my partner?
Mm.
So sex and intimacy creates a good bond, but sex is not important for an intimacy. That's what I would say. Intimacy, as I said, is much more than that. Yes, physical intimacy also doesn't necessarily just limit to penetration. Physical intimacy could be just soft touches, where you can just enjoy. As a man, I can just enjoy the soft connection. Having my partner lying next to me, even if it's naked, if I can hold and resist myself without wanting to go to that point of penetration, if I can really do that, and she really feels safe and not pressurized, I'm lying naked next to her and I can carry on for 10 hours. Why would that be a bad thing for a man? It's just that because we don't have that control, we are not aware of how much, even though physically we may be forcing ourselves, oh, Han, I'm not doing it, but our energetic intervention that happens and mental thinking that's going on in the mind, when am I gonna, go, when is she gonna say, yes, honey, come on, let's go and do our thing? That's the mental chatter that's happening, right? So physically, yes, I am creating that and maintaining that boundary. I'm giving her the space, but mentally I'm not, because mentally I'm still expecting something else. Energetically, which we don't talk about, you must have heard about 7 chakra systems. In Chinese, there is something we talk about meridians. I grew up in India, and I used to see these 7 chakras everywhere in the TVs and spirituality, etc. At that point in time, it was more of a theoretical to me, like, oh yeah, okay, they exist. But now over these years, as I have been going through my own progress, I started experiencing the activation of these chakras within my body. And that was like a big revolution. I'll give you a small example. Me and my partner, my ex-partner, one of my greatest partners of all times, we used to enjoy ourselves a lot. However, there used to be time when within half an hour or 20 minutes of our meeting, no matter what, our energies will just collapse. Like it will collapse each other out, and we would never understand why. So we started exploring. We're not doing anything bad. What is that? What is it that's causing it? I think it took us about 2 to 3 weeks and realized that energetically we were completely different. She was a very sensitive person. Like, she's very sensitive. You must have heard from a nervous perspective. She's more of a nervous system person. So a person who's a nervous system would generally be more sensitive. And I used to do a lot of bodybuilding, going to the gym. So I had that sort of heavy energy of a man. And when those energies are coming together, you can imagine how much, yes, there's an attraction, but also is 2 energies coming and then fighting each other. It's like a firecracker. When you light a cracker, what happens? You see all this crackling just going out. Energetically, that's what actually happens. We have these energetic beings, and they fight with each other. So after figuring this out, then what I needed to do is to work on harmonizing it. So we come up with a game, and we said, let's experiment. She said, every time you enter the room, 5 minutes before entrance, you either have to meditate, you have to breathe in, and focus on making sure that it's not dense. I said, okay. And the reason why I am what I'm today is because I love exploration. Without exploration, I would not have been an orgasm coach. Without explorations, I wouldn't be doing and teaching about this. So I love explorations. Okay, let's try this out. And it started to work. It really started to work. It changed our relationship dynamic. And that's what made me realize actually there is more in relationship than just the mental agreement. There's more in relationship than just talking about emotions, because there's this energetic aspect. And then at the same time I was going through this, I was learning about tantra, and I was going through this activation. Then I started playing around with activation of different energies. You have this heart chakra where you feel this immense energy. So one day I meditated for 5 minutes without telling my partner that I'm meditating on this heart energy, and then I had sex with her. She said she has never felt that level of love coming out in her body. She didn't know what I did. I was just experimenting. Then next day I experimented I had a big tree in front of me. So I meditated on a tree for 5 minutes. We had sex. And then she said she felt so grounded, like earth.
That's so great. I love it.
Yeah, like, but the reason I'm mentioning these examples is because these are at an energetic level. Now, it's not that the tree has transcended into me, is that I picked up on the energy which brought into me, which then I transferred in our connection with our sexual connection. So energy is a very, very important but hardly spoken about concept. And intimacy is a very beautiful thing. And why wouldn't I want to have all of that with my partner?
Wow. Yeah, you're so right. That energy is something that we don't talk about very much in the Western culture. I think we're only just beginning to understand more about it, and the some of the ancient Indian traditions, the chakra system, and as you say, China, and the meridians, and the health, holistic health, and acupuncture.
See, this thing is, they say sex is very boring. Yes, it is boring, because at a physical level, you can only do certain things. At a physical level, I can only penetrate up to a certain point, right? It becomes interesting when I start penetrating at an energetic level, because then I'm touching her soul, I'm touching her mind, she is touching my mind, she's touching my soul, and we are touching each other's energies. And there is no end of energy exploration, because energy is constantly moving. We are living today is because of the energy. We have mechanical, chemical energies. In the same way, we have love energy, we have sexual energy. We can play around, do a chanting for 5 minutes that focuses on your sexual energy center, and then see what happens in your sex.
So I'm quite sure that this is sparking a lot of thinking for people who are on this call here today. So if you've got a question that you would like to ask Michael, you've got something that maybe you've always had a question about a particular thing to do with some of the things that he's talking about. If you want to raise your head, then we will unmute you so that you can ask a question. And there is a question here, Michael, from Diana. How do you know if you're compatible with your partner or not?
It depends on what are you looking at. At a physical level, if I am already feeling turned on, if I already desire that connection, that I want to take it into bed, then I know that I'm already sexually compatible at a physical level. But that does not mean that I am compatible at an energetic level, right? So you will have to sort of play around with it. I'll give you another example. There was a time in my life where I was with my partner. We had amazing sex and everything, but something died out. Something died out, and I couldn't figure it out. That's when I realized that they say polarization and depolarization. So what I realized that both of us became so polarized so both of them had become depolarized with each other, which means our energies, we know about each other so much, our energies have gelled each other that we don't feel that level of attraction anymore. And then what we did, we had to work on polarizing. So what we did was we started sleeping opposite to each other but holding hands. So the energies were passing through both of us, and that brought the attraction and connection back in. So whether you're compatible. So
can you explain why that worked? Why did that work?
Why did that work?
Yeah, well, the whole. So you were experiencing kind of like boredom almost in your relationship, and so you needed to like bring back that connection. So by holding hands, that worked. How did that work?
So what they say is that there's a North Pole and a South Pole. From like North Pole on the head and South Pole on the feet. and likewise transfers up and down. What we did was we exchanged these poles. So when normally we would always cuddle up with each other, right? So we will have this energetic ball and everything created. But at some point when we are cuddling, our energies are so so gelled with each other that there isn't anything new offering. There isn't any current to excite. And what we needed to do was to change that. So when we changed our positions, that energetic current started to flow.
So you mean you slept like head to toe kind of thing?
Yes, and held hands.
God, you see, this is so fascinating. I just love it. I think that's dynamite.
Fantastic. I mean, if you think about it, like in a relationship, like when we let's say do cuddles, etc. After some period of time, cuddling just becomes cuddling. That things dies out. Play an experiment with this. You will be surprised. So to answer, I'm not sure. So to answer the question, how do we know whether we're compatible? I think it depends on which element you're looking at. At a physical level, if you're feeling joy and happiness in the relationship, and if you feel you're attracted to the other person, and you desire sexual connection, then that's the physical level connectivity. If you feel that you can share yourself openly with the other person at an emotional level, both ways, then that's your emotional compatibility. And likewise the mental, where you can share your ideas. It doesn't mean that you have to agree on the mental, agree with each other, but to be able to ping pong the ideas and have that free flow, then that's your mental compatibility. So I always like to distribute into 5 things rather than just one.
And could you just say what those 5 things are again for us?
Yes, so sure. So first is the physical level, which is the physical. Second is the mental. So mental, we talk about, I consider brain, mind, consciousness, subconsciousness, all part of that mental. Third is the emotional. So emotional is our emotions and feelings. In terms of, emotions, feelings are 2 separate things. And fourth is our energetics. And fifth is the spiritual element. So spiritual element could be relationship purpose. It could be our desires. It could be religion, or it could be transcendental connection to God.
Okay. Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. Let me just see if I've got any other questions here. Could you tell us just a little bit about your latest book again, the 21 Flavors of Orgasm? Because I think people would be interested to know a bit more about that, Michael.
Sure. So 21 Flavors of Orgasm is basically a book where it's an interview with 20 women where they have shared about what does orgasm mean for them, what it meant when they first had an orgasm, if they could recall it, or even if they knew that was an orgasm, what was their first sexual connection like, how hard or what their journey has been through in terms of the struggles, whether it's family. Some women have shared that they've gone through, they had very bad boyfriends or sexual connections, which then had led them to on a different life trajectory, and how they overcome. Some meant that they had a rape cases, so they've basically shared their life stories. And then these are all the women who are really amazing, powerful women who are doing a lot of empowerment work in different aspects in this world. And then they have shared key messages for women, that from their perspective, what is their key message if they were to speak to a woman? And they've also shared about their tips for men. So if you know any men who wants to understand more about female sexuality, this book offers 101 tips for them, because they're coming right from the original source. And then in this book, I've also shared about my journey as an introduction chapter and the end chapter, as to how my orgasm has changed, how I see female orgasm, and how my relationship has transcended or changed over these years.
How can people get a hold of that book, Michael?
You can get it on Amazon, 21 Flavors of Orgasm, or Michael Charming. If you type in, you will be able to see all the books that I've published. I've got 2 more coming up later this year.
Wow, you've been busy. You've been very busy. So if they Google, I'm going to put your email address in the chat.
Yes, that's coach@michaelcharming.com. If you have any questions, or if you want to have a confidential conversation, please feel free to reach out. I work, I'm a body worker as well. So body work is something that's very intimate, but life-changing experience.
Yeah, so we've just put all of that information in the chat, and we've got a comment here. Excellent conversation. Thank you very much, Mary. Yeah, so okay, what's coming up for you next now? This is, you know, you've been busy writing and you've been busy doing so many different things. What's on your path, Michael, going forward from here?
Yeah, so one of the things I've sort of been looking at now is to go and study a little bit more around the pelvic area, because that's where a lot of things being held. So even though I've done a lot of work, but I think this is one of the things, you know, where I feel I can always learn more. So I've got that course coming up in the coming 2 months. I'm looking forward to that. I've got 2 other books coming up down. One of them is slightly different topic, which is more around my romance. So my if you like reading about romance, so that's my real, true, based love story that happened. And then also another book which is focusing on sex diary of an Indian boy, that how I grew up, especially in that sort of a culture where things were not spoken, but a lot of experiences happened based on who I was then, whether in naivety or whether intentional. But I share about it's a very vulnerable, because it talks about things that happened to me. But yeah, so I'm looking forward to that, and then creating some courses for men. One of the courses that I'm working on is, you know, how a lot of I hear that there's a lot of condemn for men not to watch porn, and I'm totally against it. I'm like, men should watch porn. There's nothing wrong with it, because a single man needs to have an outlet. If you're gonna, it's our sexual body has a desire, we have a need. There's nothing wrong in having, women have different ways of outlets, right? They connect with females, they do different things, and men have a different way. There's nothing wrong with watching a porn, but just know that when it comes to reality, that's not the reality that you are experiencing in porn. So you should be able to willing to work in learning and transforming yourselves in the background while you're enjoying and watching porn, and while you're looking for a next relationship.
Fantastic. Yeah, brilliant. Well, I have really enjoyed talking to you, Michael, today. I knew I would. And I really have enjoyed our conversation very much indeed. And I can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing with us today. And I'm sure that let's just hear from everybody else. Would you just like to give Michael a thumbs up or something in the chat, or give him a clap to let him know that you've appreciated what he's been talking about? So let's just get some feedback from everybody so that we know. That would be really helpful. Yes, got some hearts coming in.